Hi, I'm Professor Green. Let's do chapter 12, part 2. So, firms that operate internationally, what happens when we talk about global expansion, profitability, and profit growth? So, first, we, as I mentioned before, expand the market for the domestic product offerings, more consumers. Then we realize that there might be location economies by dispersing value creation activities to locations around the globe. So thinking about, right, cheaper labor, call centers abroad, manufacturing cheaper abroad, et cetera, capital that can be efficient and more efficiently invested. Then the third thing is that we also realize that there are greater cost economies from experience effects by serving an expanded global market. So reducing the cost of value creation, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about how we, economies of scale, and also about how a lot of learning happens when we, produce 1,000 widgets at a time, et cetera. So then the last thing is we also earn a greater return by leveraging any valuable skills developed in foreign operations and transferring them to other entities within the firm's global network of operations, which is really cool, right? That we can see that, something learned, in the Swiss economy again, about efficiency, getting up early. Right now it's 7 a.m. in California. And I'm recording this video with COVID, that maybe some of those things can be transferred back to the home country. Let's talk about expanding the market, first, leveraging products and competencies. So to increase growth, they can sell products or service developed at home in the foreign market. So we've talked about this already in this course, right? That maybe initially a company like Apple produced a lot of its products at home in California in the US, but then they decided to produce them abroad much cheaper, but then they sell them back to American consumers. So this success depends on the type of goods and services and the firm's core competence. Again, another key word that I love to practice on Friday nights at the bar with my colleagues at Thunderbird. The skills within, my mind is in Switzerland, right? The skills, not the skis, within the firm that competitors cannot easily match or imitate. So really important to become familiar with these terms. They enable the firm to reduce costs, create perceived value, um, so premium pricing is possible, and are the source of a firm's competitive advantage. So there are many, many examples of how organizations have done this, but I'll move to IKEA for this one. This affordable furniture idea really did not exist. And my dad always says, how can you keep buying furniture over and over when you move, all these different times? And I said, well, because it's affordable, right? And in his day, that was not the case. He would buy, one living room set. My dad still has his bedroom set from before I was born, which is now 50 years old, right? I've had probably 50 bedroom sets in the 50 years that I've lived. Okay, let's go ahead and I keep moving. They give an example also of Procter and Gamble's core competency in marketing. Olay men's skincare, which I'm sure you're aware of, even if you're not into skincare. These products are for sale in Shanghai, and that, they have, Procter and Gamble just has done so well in the skincare market with their brand and with their value, and then they can so easily then move into different global markets and access more consumers. So what are location economies? Again, thinking about how we can value creation activities where economic, political, and cultural conditions are most conducive to performance of that activity. And yes, I did mention, moving call centers to India, radiologists, et cetera. But there are other things, not just cheap labor, cost advantages from performing a value creation activity that is optimal location for that activity, wherever they might be in the world. So, and it's not just cheaper things, but it's also the value. Another example that they do is about Switzerland, again, about precision instruments and pharmaceuticals, right? Because the Switzerland was in a great location when France started to develop all these amazing fabrics and designs and things, and the Swiss were very good at being precise, and so they did dyes that were very precise, and then now they can do pharmaceuticals that also require this amazing precision. Bangladesh is another example, with apparel production, right? A really cheap and efficient place to make shirts and clothing. So locating value creation activities in optimal locations can lower the costs of value creation, as I mentioned, or it can enable a firm to differentiate its product offering from those of competitors, right? So great. Creating a global web. Again, we've mentioned this already in this course. So it's not just a straight arrow, one direction or another. It's a web of different of organizations, multinationals that take advantage of global economies, create a global web of value creation activities. The different stages of the value chain are dispersed to those locations around the globe where perceived value is maximized or where the costs are minimized, right? So again, that idea of the t-shirt, the cotton is grown here in the southeast of the United States, then that cotton is spun and moved to Asia, where that is moved into and worked into a t-shirt, and then that shipped back maybe to the northeast of the United States or to Europe, where the print is put on the t-shirt, etc. So it's really a web of where the most efficiencies lie. There's some caveats though, right? It doesn't, it's not just so simple. You don't wake up one day and start shipping t-shirts around the world or cotton around the world or deciding that you're going to invest in Switzerland for your pharmaceuticals. There are transportation costs, right, as we spoke about, and there are trade barriers that complicated it. And as we've said many times in this course, tariffs, subsidies, etc., will move how you make those decisions. And then, of course, there are political and economic risks, which we talked about in chapter 3. We want to make sure that we have a stable government and that the economy is stable wherever it is that we decide to invest. So now let's talk a little bit about experience effects and this experience curve, which we'll look at on the next slide. There are systematic reductions in production costs that occur over the life of a product, which again, you'll show up probably in your operations course. And the production costs decline by some quantity as about each time cumulative output doubles. So that's pretty cool to see that that as we move forward, that there are two key pieces that contribute to this experience curve. It's both the learning effects that we'll discuss on this slide, and then on the next slide, or the slide after the next, talking about economies of scale. Learning effects. Again, because I worked in operations for such a long time, I think this is such a cool place. I worked both for Credit Suisse and for Citibank in a group called Efficiency Management. And so how can we make things more efficient? And a big piece of this is learning and making sure the employees have the knowledge to do their job most efficiently. So the cost savings that come from learning by doing. So the more that an employee does something, they can do it faster, as we all see. Labor productivity increases when they learn the most efficient ways to perform similar tasks. And management learns also how to manage the new operation more efficiently. And this is, exponentially helpful, not necessarily when we're talking about 100 steps within an operation, but 1,000 steps, right? When we're producing products in China, for example, right? That the person who's actually putting these pieces of things together, right? That learning effect can really move so easily and so nicely. What research has shown, though, is that after 2 to 3 years, that this learning effect actually disappears. So then if you still continue to see efficiencies, it's more attributed to economies of scale as opposed to learning. But as I said, within the first 2 to 3 years, we really like to see that our efficiency can move very, very nicely and very quickly. And so this is what that experience curve looks like, right? As the unit costs go up, the output initially will be low, but as we move forward, that the unit cost drops quite significantly and our output continues to increase. Let's now talk about economies of scale. So again, a key term again for this course or for anything in business at business school, we're talking about reductions in the unit cost by producing a large volume of product, the ability to spread fixed costs, right? So you pay for your rent that's your fixed cost or your mortgage on the building over a large volume, can be unable to attain efficient scale production unless serving your global markets. So if you, as I said, or as I wanted to mention, if Intel, for example, they rent or buy a building in Arizona, that's a fixed cost. But if they didn't serve global markets, then with microprocessors, then they would only be open for one shift 5 days a week, right, 8 hours or so. But that wouldn't make them enough money to pay their rent or mortgage on an ongoing way. So they now, because they serve global markets, they can keep that operations going 24 hours a day. Bargaining power increases with suppliers, which may allow economies of scale and purchasing as well. So now you have more people that are buying your products. So now you can, if you're not producing those things yourself, like in the Intel example, you can bargain with your suppliers. And there's a strategic significance in that moving down the experience curve allows firms to reduce its costs in creating value, increase its profitability, as I said on the previous slide. And once a firm has established this low cost position, right, this is going to be key for this chapter, right? We want to get the lowest cost as possible because you're going to have competitors very quickly entering the market. It can act as a barrier to new competition, right? And so as we've said already a few times, very quickly, other competitors will be able to create the same product. But if you can create it cheaper, then you will have advantage. So leveraging the subsidiary skills. This is recognizing that there's just 2 more slides here in this part, recognizing that valuable skills can be developed anywhere within the firm's global network, not just at the corporate center, right? So again, people who, are hesitant about going abroad, I often say, like, there are things to be learned, right? That there are efficiencies abroad that you might not be aware of. And that's why I think it's just so important to travel and then to eventually to invest abroad. As we see, with Sweden or with Scandinavia, right? IKEA has done so well when it comes to affordable furniture, and we would have never have known that had we not gotten involved with IKEA. So using incentive systems to encourage local employees to acquire new skills. So that's another thing that you want to make sure that the local employees are something to, have bonuses or certain little smaller goals to acquire these new skills that they're learning, whether that be a skill that's from their home country or a skill that you're bringing from abroad. Also develop a process to identify when new skills have been created. So right, new skills will develop. And when I worked at Citibank and I was in efficiency management, we were coming in from the New York City office, and I was going to remote locations like upstate New York, Albany, Tampa, Delaware. And, we would come in and introduce a new software, for example, for processing checks. And so what we would encourage the employees to learn this new software. They would get, bonuses or promotions if they learn this new software. And then when these new skills had been created, when they maybe became proficient or a leader with this potential software, then they could again become incentivized to, and say, okay, now they're going to become the lead for this potential software and make that a new position, for example. And act as facilitators to transfer valuable skills within the firm, right? So that was again a key part of my job because I worked in IT, was then to identify who is that employee who is the leader with this new software and what other divisions within Citibank could he teach those employees about this new software. And then the last slide for this part is profitability and profit growth summary. So firms that expand internationally can increase profitability and profit growth by entering markets where competitors lack the similar competitive competencies, right? So again, we think about McDonald's, right? So McDonald's, unfortunately or unfortunately, has kicked a lot of the smaller mom and pop restaurants out of business in places like Lithuania or developing markets because they're just so efficient at what they do when it comes to serving fast food. Realizing location economies. So again, McDonald's is so great because they really work with the local farmers and the local cows, et cetera, to get the products that they need. Exploiting experience curve effects. So again, making it very efficient, making sure the employees know how to serve hamburgers and French fries very quickly because they know the process so well. And then transferring valuable skills within the organization. And then again, McDonald's has done well. Starbucks too. Their management training programs are really great, coming from headquarters down to the barista. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and stop here, and we'll start up again with part 3 and with chapter 12 in the next video. Thank you for joining me on my COVID journey here today.